Hey you, yes you! Before we dive into the world of sweet and delicious treats, I have a funny story to share. Have you ever met someone who can't tell the difference between a real fart and a fake one? Well, I have. Meet Moira, an old lady with a heart of gold and a sense of humor that's, well, let's just say it's a little off. One day she sat on a whoopee cushion and thought she was really farting. The strange noises caught her off guard and she would jump out of her skin every time. But the funniest part? Every time she actually farted, she thought it was the whoopee cushion. Poor Moira. She never could figure it out. But just like Moira's unexpected surprises, we've got our own surprise for you today. We're about to take a simple blondie recipe and turn into a symphony of sweetness. So stick around to discover the secret to our ultra-sweet, delicious blondies. And before we go, here's a little joke to end the scene. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Ever wondered how to make ultra-sweet, delicious blondies? There's a world of sweetness waiting for you, hidden within the soft, chewy confines of a blondie. A blondie, for those unfamiliar, is a rich, sweet dessert bar. It resembles the classic brownie, swaps out the cocoa for brown sugar, resulting in a sweet, buttery treat that's delightfully chewy. But today, we're taking it a step further. We're not just making any blondies, we're making ultra-sweet, delicious blondies with a twist. Our secret ingredients: caramel sauce and sweetened condensed milk. Imagine that. The buttery, vanilla-infused blondie base, studded with white chocolate and butterscotch chips, all swirled with a generous drizzle of caramel sauce and sweetened condensed milk. It's a dessert lover's dream come true, a symphony of sweetness in every bite. Ready to discover the secret to these mouth-watering treats? Stay tuned. And while we're talking about sweet treats, here's a sweet little joke for you. Why don't skeletons fight each other? They don't have the guts. First things first, gather your ingredients. We'll need some unsalted butter melted to perfection and light brown sugar packed tight. These will give our blondies a rich, buttery sweetness. As you do so, let me give you a hilarious background story. Once our dear friend Ms. Belle Pum was dancing down the road like the character she was. Out of nowhere, a man appeared with a dentist's chair. He captured her and poured green ghoul up her nose. The sound it made was something like a donkey farting with a trumpet stuck up its bumhole. The green ghoul, slimy and vinegary, jetted through her nose, past her mouth and out the other side. He poured 5 litres of the stuff through her. Post-ordeal, she had to be taken inside for a comforting cup of tea. And would you believe it, this entire spectacle unfolded outdoors. Now, isn't that a chuckle-worthy tale to remember as you gather your ingredients? Yay! Let's lighten the mood, shall we? Moving on, we'll need 2 large eggs and a dash of vanilla extract for enhancing the overall flavour. Our dry ingredients include all-purpose flour, a touch of baking powder and baking soda for lift, and a bit of salt to balance out the sweetness. The stars of our show are the white chocolate chips and butterscotch chips, giving a delightful crunch and extra sweetness. Our secret weapons for this recipe are a generous helping sauce and sweetened condensed milk, giving our blondies a heavenly sweet, gooey texture. So, that's our lineup. A symphony of sweet, salty and buttery flavours that will create the most delicious blondies you've ever tasted. Got everything? Fantastic, let's move on to the next step. Always remember, a hearty laugh and a good story make cooking more fun. Whoa! Hold on a minute. I just found a very large rose petal under the cat. How in the world did it get there? Anyway, back to blondies. If anyone tries to interrupt us while we're baking, I swear well, let's say it won't be pleasant. It's like when you're in a shop and are children running around. It might be annoying to some people, but let's remember, kids need to play and explore. And honestly, sometimes we adults need to get over ourselves, just like running up a hill. It's tough, but once we reach the top, the view is worth it. And sure, some people might complain or even scream at these kids, but hey, children cry, they learn, and they grow. It's all part of life. So let's take this as a lesson. Let's be patient, let's be understanding, and let's make these blondies with love and joy. Now let's get back to our recipe. And just for a little chuckle before we do, here's a joke for you. What do you call cheese that isn't yours? Nacho cheese. Before we dive into the mixing, let's preheat the oven and prepare the baking dish. Getting your oven to the right temperature is essential for the perfect bake. So let's crank it up to 175 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. While our oven is preheating, let's turn our attention to the baking dish. We will be using a 23 by 33 centimeters or a 9 by 13 inches dish for this recipe. To ensure our blondies don't stick, we can use one of two methods. We can either grease the dish thoroughly, making sure to get in all the corners, or we can line it with parchment paper. Both methods work great. It's just a matter of personal preference. With our oven preheating and our baking dish ready, we are set to start the real fun, mixing the ingredients. Now that we're all set, it's time to start mixing. And here's a little fun fact for you. Why do cows wear bells? Because their horns don't work. Now let's get mixing. With that, our wet ingredients are ready. They've been mixed and mingled, each element enhancing the others, creating a harmonious blend of flavours that will form the backbone of our blondies. But we're not done yet. Now, onto the dry ones. And here's a little joke for you. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything, just like our sweet delight here, made up of all these delicious ingredients. Now, while our wet and dry ingredients are getting acquainted, let me share a little family story with you. Once upon a time, in the heart of our home, the kitchen, Houve, the mother of our little clan, was having a tough day. She told her kids, Pole, Noodles and Zoe, to fetch their own snacks and bring them to the living room. Little did she know her words would be interpreted quite literally. Pole, our dear polar bear, decided to bring the entire kitchen table laden with snacks right into the living room. The result, a chaotic scene that still makes us laugh and cringe at the same time. The door was broken, and plaster and soot were scattered everywhere. Even the roof tiles fell. It was a disaster, but also a lesson about the importance of clear communication and the unpredictable charm of family life. It's these memories, these shared moments of joy, laughter, and sometimes chaos that make our kitchen more than just a room. It's a space where love is tangible and where each recipe is steeped in stories. So as we back to our recipe, remember the messes we make, the mishaps we have, they all add flavour to our lives and our food. Now let's get back to our blondie batter and see what other stories we can bake into it. And speaking of baking, here's a little joke to chew on. Why don't skeletons fight each other? They don't have the guts. While the wet ingredients are set, let's get the dry ones ready. In a separate bowl, we're going to whisk together our all-purpose flour, baking powder, baking soda, and a touch of salt. The flour forms base of our blondies, while the baking powder and baking soda will give them that perfect rise. The salt, though it might seem odd in a sweet treat, actually enhances the flavours, making them even more delectable. Now, it's important to remember to these ingredients together thoroughly. This isn't just about combining them, it's about aerating the flour, which will make our blondies lighter and fluffier. So, give it a good whisk until it's well blended with no lumps remaining, and there you have it. Your dry ingredients are all set. Now it's time to marry the wet and dry ingredients. Gradually the dry mixture into the wet one. And when we say gradually, we mean it. Don't be tempted to dump all the in at once. Adding it in slowly ensures that everything gets incorporated evenly without overmixing. Overmixing can lead to tough blondies, and we want ours to be soft and chewy. So add the flour mixture bit by bit, mixing gently after each addition. Remember, we're not after a completely smooth batter here. A few lumps are perfectly okay. In fact, they're desirable. It's a sign that you haven't overmixed, and that's exactly what we want. And there you have it. Our basic blondie batter is ready. It's beautifully thick, rich, and oh so tempting. But hold sweet tooth for just a moment longer. We're not done yet. Got the base, and now it's time to build on that. Now we have our basic blondie batter, but we're not done yet. It's time for the sweet extras. And speaking of sweet, here's a little joke to lighten the mix. You know why don't fight each other? Because they don't have the guts. Now, before we move on to the sweet extras, let me share a funny kitchen mishap that happened once. It involves our dear friend, Miss Belle Pum. You see, Miss Belle Pum once asked Zoe to help prepare a pot of soup to serve before our blondies. Zoe, being the helpful soul she is, agreed. But in the heat of the moment, a hilarious mix-up occurred. Miss Belle Pum, in her haste, grabbed a bottle of glue instead of the soup thickener, and without realising, she added it to the simmering pot. Can imagine, glue in soup. When everyone sat down to enjoy their meal, the soup had a rather unique texture. To their surprise, they found their mouths glued shut. The room was filled with muffled laughter and wide-eyed surprise. It's safe to say no one expected a soup course quite like that. Thankfully, after some warm water and a lot of giggles, everyone was able to open their mouths again. It was a hiccup, yes, but a memorable one that we all look back on with laughter. So, remember folks, always double-check your ingredients, especially when you're cooking with friends. The kitchen can be a place of unexpected laughter and lessons. Now, let's get back to our blondies, shall we? But before we do, here's a little humour for why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything that we have our laughs out back to the blondies. This is where our blondies go from good to great. We're going to fold in our white chocolate and butterscotch chips. Don't be shy now. They're the stars of the show. You want to make sure they're evenly distributed throughout the batter. This way, every bite you take will have that delightful combination of white chocolate and butterscotch. Next, we're ready to pour the batter into our prepared baking dish. Just gently ease it in, making sure it spreads out evenly. It's like laying a blanket on a bed. You want to ensure every corner is covered. Now for the piece de resistance. It's time to drizzle our caramel sauce and sweetened condensed milk over the top. Don't worry about being too precise. This isn't a science experiment. It's more like creating a beautiful, edible piece of art. Once you've added your drizzles, take a or a skewer and gently swirl them into the batter. This gives your blondies a lovely marbled effect. Plus it ensures that the caramel and condensed milk get into every nook and cranny, making for a delicious surprise in every bite. And now, into the oven they go. Set your timer for 25 to 30 minutes. As they bake, the blondies will fill your kitchen with a mouth-watering aroma. It's a sweet, buttery scent that's almost as good as the blondies themselves. Almost. While they're baking, resist the temptation to open the oven door. You don't want to let any of that precious heat escape. Patience is key here. Once they're golden brown and a toothpick comes out clean, you'll know they're ready. The wait might seem long, but remember, good things come to those who wait. And trust me, these blondies are more than good. They're great. Remember, baking is all about having fun and enjoying the process. So don't stress too much about getting everything perfect. As long as you've got the right ingredients and a bit of love, you're sure to make something delicious. And now for a little baking humour. Why did the tomato turn red? Because it saw the salad dressing. The last step is patience. Let them cool before diving in. As tempting as it may be to cut into these golden, gooey blondies straight from the oven, it's essential to give them time to cool. This cooling period allows the blondies to set properly, ensuring that when you do slice into them, they hold their shape. It also helps to enhance their flavours, as the caramel sauce and sweetened condensed milk meld together and seep into the blondie base. Picture the result. Each square will have a perfect balance of buttery blondie, rich caramel, and creamy condensed milk. The white chocolate and butterscotch chips will provide delightful pockets of sweetness. All these flavours and textures brought together in harmony are well worth the wait. So, let your blondies cool in the pan on a wire rack. Once they've reached room temperature, cut them into squares. Then, it's time to savour. And there you have it, ultra sweet, delicious blondies. Enjoy! And before we wrap up, here's a little joke for you. Why don't oysters donate to charity? Because they're shellfish. Well, I guess they can't all be as sweet as our blondies.